There are no words that can express the love I have for you. There are no emotions so great than the pain that now comes through. You left us so quickly, in the blink of an eye. It was all that sadness that made you want to die. All that remains inside me now is an unbearable hole in my heart. I try to focus on your memory to help me feel as if we are not apart. When you were born, I could never stop staring at your beautiful face. Who would have ever thought you would give up the race? Through all the pain that I feel, you will always be my life's joy. No matter what life has dealt, you will always be my baby boy. It's only been months since you've been gone. It seems like it's been way too long. Wanting you back and wanting you here is all I ask. How can that be wrong? I love you, my son, is all I can say, with tears of sadness that appear as I lay. So for now, baby, I will hold you dear in my heart until I can hold you near. Brandon. Brandon was an amazing human being. He was so caring. There wasn't anything that he wouldn't do for anybody. Growing up, he was so loving. I remember him in kindergarten. He was the little boy that sat on the teacher's lap during story time. He was the cuddler. He just won everybody's heart. You know, he was silly and goofy and always made you laugh. He was, I don't know, he was everything to me.
The things I love the most about Brandon probably would be how he'd always look out for somebody. Even though he was a distance person, he's always there. You can always feel him there. He's also a role model, someone to look up to, how he acted, how he worked.
We were sitting in the living room and Brandon had been over. He was sitting with us and we were watching a movie, so we paid no mind to anybody getting up and leaving or anything like that. And we heard knocking on the wall, and we had just moved to this newer house, so we heard knocking on the wall, and it was kind of scary because we didn't know where it had come from. So everyone was thinking like the house was haunted or something, but it come to find out he was trying to scare us all. He was knocking on the wall, making this really loud knocking sound, and no one paid attention that he got up and walked away because we were all focused in on a movie. But yeah, so he was a prankster. He was very hardworking. He loved his family. We loved him unconditionally. He loved his family. He loved to prove that he could do things. And he just, he was a great kid, great young man. He was 22.
Most thing we did together was definitely hunting. I think there's maybe my freshman year of high school, his senior year, I think every single weekend we went up north and hunted.
He did bow and gun hunting. Brandon was the ultimate hunter. He was the first one out and the last one in. He would go out at 3 in the morning. Everybody at night, they would be in, they'd eat, whatever, and they would be like, "Where's Brandon? Where's Brandon?" He'd still be out in the woods. He was a true hunter. My dad had passed away, and my dad was Brandon's father figure. My dad was everything to Brandon. And Brandon took it really hard when my dad passed away. The drinking increased. He isolated himself even more. And he was angry all the time. And I found out later that he would cry himself to sleep every night because he missed my dad. And that's when things really, really changed for him. And then he decided to move up north. There was an issue with the family's property up north, and so Brandon decided to go up there and live to take care of the property. I wanted to keep an eye on him because I knew that he wouldn't do good up there, but once Brandon had his mind set on something, there was no telling Brandon. So you take an already depressed child who's drinking a lot and you move him up in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't know anybody. He's lonely. And to me, that's a recipe for disaster.
This was Sunday. I woke up Sunday and still hadn't heard from Brandon. And I tried calling, nothing, which was odd because he never, ever not called me back or never dismissed my text messages. He would always text or call me back. So I called the police department just to see if maybe he got picked up for DUI, something like that. And he said, they told me that they have Brandon, they found Brandon, and that they wouldn't disclose any information to me because I was not a family member. So the police department, the detective wants you to call him, and he'll let you know where Brandon's at. Okay. So Jason hollers to me, hey, they found Brandon. I gotta call the detective. So we found him. All right, thank God. We're in that. See that boy? I'm gonna give it to him. Why weren't you getting back to us? That's, better. Come on, So he's talking to the detective, and my husband's a pacer. When he stops pacing, something's wrong. And he stopped pacing when he was on the phone with the detective. And I said, where is my nephew? Where is my nephew? And he's like, and the look on his face, I knew something wasn't right. So I said, where is he? And he says, I gotta go. My wife is asking where her nephew is, and I need to answer her right now. So we hung up the phone. And he said they found Brandon. I said, okay, well, where is he? He's okay, right? He's okay. And he looked at me and he said, I'm okay. I'm like, what do you mean? Did he get into a car accident? What? Was he drinking and driving? What? He said, no. He wasn't in a car accident. Brandon is no longer with us. And I said, what? This is not a joke. This is not funny. Where is Brandon? Well, he's not with us anymore. He took his own life. And I said, oh, he took his own life? No. What? No, he didn't. And then, reality set in, he took his own life. I collapsed in his arms. And we had to go find my sister to fill her in. And so we had to be the ones to tell her that her son was gone.
My last conversation with my son wasn't good. He was upset with me because of choice in who I had in my life at that particular moment. And he had called me and he was being disrespectful to me on the phone. And of course I want to hear what my son has to say, but I don't want you to disrespect me. And that was my whole point. And my last conversation with my son was, Brandon, I love you, but I'm not going to have you disrespecting me. If you want to call me later and we can talk about this, then give me a call. But I'm not going to have you disrespecting me, so I'm getting off the phone. I remember my brother-in-law calling me on my cell phone, and my brother-in-law, after my dad passed away, he kind of took over being the father figure for Brandon. And he always tried to make things right whenever Brandon and I had gotten into it. And so my brother-in-law called me, and he's like, I need to talk to you about Brandon. And I'm like, Jay, I don't want to talk about Brandon right now. I want Brandon to call and apologize to me. He was disrespectful. I want Brandon to apologize. He's like, but I really need to talk to you about Brandon. I'm like, I don't want to talk about Brandon right now. I'll give you a call a little later. And so I hung up with him. And I'm sitting at my mom's and talking with her, and then all of a sudden the doorbell rings. I don't even know what time frame it was. I go and answer the door, and it's my brother-in-law. And so I go out, and he's like, I want you to sit down. I sit down. He's like, Beth, Brandon's gone. I'm like, where'd Brandon go? Beth, Brandon's gone. I said, where'd Brandon go? He said, Beth, Brandon's dead. And the first thing I said was that I killed my child, because the last conversation wasn't the greatest with him. And my brother-in-law was like, you didn't kill your son. And that day, the worst day of my life, and then to have to tell his brother, my son, was the hardest. To hurt my child like that. To have to tell him his brother's gone.
The supervisor came over and said that I had a phone call. So I walked over, and I forgot what number I dialed, and he said, hey, Kyle, your mom called and said that you have to go to your Grandma Kathy's. So I immediately knew something was wrong. And as I was driving over there, I was just thinking in my head that our grandma had passed away. And I thought it was so weird because we had just seen her the day before. And she seemed to be just fine. And then I get there, and there was already a few people outside, and I was in my dad's truck, and I closed the door, and after I saw my grandma there, I was like, oh, maybe my dad died. As I was walking up, that's all I was thinking about. And I got there, and my grandma said, you might want to sit down for this. And I was like, no, I'll be okay. And my mom grabbed me and just started hugging me. And I said, what? She said, that Brandon died. And I said, what? She said, Brandon died. Brandon killed himself. And I immediately rejected it and didn't want to believe it. And we were just, I was just in shock. And everyone was crying. And so I remember I walked away and I walked on the path and went and sat on the rocks on the beach, and I just kept calling his phone to see if they're lying, because I didn't believe it. And I just kind of sat there for a while and didn't want to believe it's true.
Their pain is so focused and that all they can see is their own pain. And they start to lose perspective that they are in a world of people that may care about them, or that they have other things going for them. And so the common theme that I see is they lose perspective, and the pain becomes so acute that they feel a need to end their suffering. It becomes a very self-focused way of seeing the world, and then it certainly, whether it's an attempt or they complete a suicide, it's devastating for themselves as well as for the people that love them.
I can't ever see Brandon get married. I'll never have a grandchild from him. I'll never get to experience the things that I'm supposed to with him. How do you live without your child? But I play those days over and over in my head, wondering what I could have done better, so that way then that night he could have reached out to me, because he knew how much I loved him. He knew there wasn't anything that I wouldn't have done to help him. And because of the happenings that day, he did not reach out to me. And had he, maybe he'd still be here. And that's what I have to live with.
Life without him now sucks. It's not fun. There's lots of guilt and blame and anger. But at the same time, knowing that he's in a better place, and feeling him watching over me, and knowing how much he loved me kind of takes control over everything else, because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters.
Family and friends often feel so guilty about not having seen signs that they now recognize as signs. And certainly if people have ignored loved ones, then they need to take stock of that in themselves. But if they have been living a life and they just miss the signs, that doesn't make them responsible for the act of suicide that the person took. With that said, I think if we're concerned about a friend or relative, it's really okay to ask about, are you considering suicide? And short of that, to say, look, I'm concerned about you. You look like you're not feeling well. Let's talk. Or offer to help them get to help.
Just, as a parent, just love your child unconditionally every single day, every single minute. and get them the help they need if you know, if you're aware that they're suicidal. In this case, we did not have any instinct, any clue. We had no idea. He was very happy. He was happy all the time. From what I noticed, I've never seen him upset, other than if something was just, if he was having a bad day at work or something. So it was a shock to all of us that he, was like this. Grab your children and love them every day, and let them know that you're always here. I'm always here. I'll help you no matter what. Always.
Just be there. Just be there and let them know that they're not alone. Let them know that there isn't anything that they're going through that is going to make them think less of their child. Know that no matter what, they're going to love their child, no matter what they're going through. They will help them. They will help see them through, letting them know that they're there ultimately.
I would just pay attention to it. And if you notice it happening more frequently, or something changes, specifically a drastic change, then I would definitely bring it up to them, but also just making them feel welcomed and loved.
I did a test and everything, and I put happy pictures of myself, and I get like a ton of likes and loves and comments and everything like that. And then I will post something about suicide or ask people to share, and I get maybe the same handful of people. People don't want to know. People don't want to address. I don't think that people really realize what a problem it actually is. It's a problem. It's a problem that every family can be touched by. No family is exempt from. And I think that people really actually need to listen.
Because it's kind of like a silent killer. Like in our case with Brandon, we had no idea. So I think that the more research that's done on people who want to commit suicide, or people who have committed suicide, their families, if there are answers or like things that this person may have done that resembles something that another person may have done, those little things add up, and I think it should be talked about. I think awareness, any way we can get it, if it can save 1, 2, 10, everybody from even thinking about it, I think we should be very proactive with it.
I feel if you have an idea of what happens afterwards, that could subconsciously take over what you truly want to do or think about doing. Just knowing what it's like to be on the other side, I feel should be talked about more, because I think that will hit someone who is struggling with something more, especially if they're not feeling loved, but they love the people around them.
By talking about it and asking questions and presenting people with knowledge and understanding about suicide, and just not just about suicide, but about how we care about one another during our lives. I think it's important to recognize risk factors for suicide, but also recognize that we need to take care of one another, that when suicides occur, many, many people are impacted. We need to care for one another in that way too.
The song that I wrote for Brandon pretty much just came from built up anger and sadness with there being no note or anything because it happened in just a spare moment of time. So the song is called The Letter That Was Never Wrote. The final regards of the song just talks about how him talking with God, and if he had another chance to go back, he would do it differently. And the song just ends with me saying, "I love you, Mom." And the whole song is in his perspective of me being him, writing his own suicide note or letter. So the song just came from us not really having anything, no idea, to a quick 4 minutes of what it could have led up to, what might have led him to doing so, and to give us closure with what happened.
It just reminds me of my misery. It teaches, it shows, it tells me what I've been through. It kicks me, stops me, and beats me until I let it through. Damn, I wish I could tell you what I went through. Yeah, wish I could tell you what I've been through. But this is the letter that was never wrote. This is the letter that was never wrote. This is the letter that was never wrote.